Sox in the basement.
So I went to a costume party this past weekend. As I dive into this episode of Sox in the Basement, it's audio only, this episode only. I just needed to fix some things up around the studio, and the cameras are not ready to go yet in time for this show. But we are on the Tuesday, Friday release schedule, and video returns on Friday for all of those that want to watch us. But anyway, it was costume party time for the Lanuti family, my friend, this past Saturday. And this started, I want to say, 4 or 5 years ago. My cousin Nora had a Halloween party, and it's turned into a thing where cousins fly in from all over the country with the most elaborate costumes now. Like, people really get into it. Do you still costume for Halloween?
I don't personally costume because all I really am doing on Halloween for the most part these days is just taking the 8-year-old girl around and watching her go house to house. Even my 14-year-old doesn't do it anymore. He's costuming this year just so he can attempt to scare kids, but his idea of scaring kids is he's going to play Luigi's Mansion on his GameCube on an old TV in front of our house while he's handing out candy and a mask and a hat. So
do you drag the cooler in a wheel, not a wheelbarrow, but in a wagon behind you? You got the wagon with the cooler and the other neighbors when you're moving around, or no?
No, because my neighborhood's really good about us taking care of the other adults. So if anybody needs one, usually
you trick or treat for beer? That's amazing.
No, I don't. But if I'm offered, I walk around asking for it.
Anyway, everybody was all dressed up. I always go with a simple costume. I'm Maverick this year. If I go to something else, I'm Maverick. It's just blue jeans, a white t-shirt. I got the jacket. I put on the aviator glasses. I got the dog tags. Maverick. That's it.
Are you going for 1980s Maverick there, or are you going for the more recent Maverick?
I'm clearly more recent Maverick. I mean, I'm 48. I'm clearly, still sexy like Tom Cruise, but 48 sexy. That's what I'm going for right now.
Okay.
Divorced, 48, Tom Cruise, different girl than the last girl kind of Maverick. That's what I am, okay? I'm the second movie Maverick is what I am. But my cousin, actually, she has this party, and, everybody's at this thing, and my brother-in-law comes walking up to me. And he goes, "You got to see this picture today of your nephew, Connor, because we went to Goodwill to get stuff for our costume. And look what he found." And he opens up the phone and he shows me a picture for $2 at the local Southside Goodwill. You can get a Sox in the Basement trucker hat.
Oh, my God.
And what I thought was funny is we've handed out I was thinking about this. I've probably made over the years 1,000 of these things, maybe 2,000 of these things. And the fact that they were always free, I never sold them. I think only once we tried to open up an online store, I think about 4 or 5 people bought them. People used to just wait till we had an event and they would get a free one, right? This one most likely was handed out for free. Now it's $2. So I just thought that was amazing. That's the first time I've ever seen Sox in the Basement merch in the Goodwill.
Well, the downside is now this guy obviously donated it because he doesn't like us anymore or something. You got to pay for it now instead of free.
Maybe he died, Ed. Let's stay positive. Maybe he dropped dead, and this was just the estate giving it away. Let's not say that somebody doesn't like us. Let's hope it's because of a death. That sounds wrong.
I'll take death over being disliked.
Wrong. I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, the $1,000 guest bounty is going on right now, brought to you by Cork and Carry at the park. You can win $1,000 if you bring in a really good guest. You have to have some connection to them. You have to have a phone number, an email, a way that it's being set up where you've helped us get the guest. And then the listeners will be voting around spring training on the best guest of the offseason. And the winner gets $1,000. Don Cooper was on a couple of weeks ago. We're working on a few other ones. I have some really interesting guests that I don't think you would think of until they're on the show, but once they're on, you are going to love them. It's all about timing, though, and making sure we get them on. So some of these may have to wait till November, December. Your idea might get in before them. Go to soxinthebasement.com, fill out the contact form, hit us up in the DMs on any of the social media, and we will see whether or not you can win the $1,000 guest bounty, brought to you by Cork and Carry at the park at 33rd and Princeton in the shadow of the ballpark. Award-winning menu of ballpark favorites, burgers, so much there. Indoor, outdoor seating during the season. A great neighborhood bar right now. And don't forget about the location over at 106th and Western, the original Cork and Carry. See more at corkandcarry.com. There was an interview given to Scott Merkin that you wanted to bring up today.
Yeah, Darrin Jackson, good old DJ, celebrating apparently 27 years.
I can't believe
as a White Sox broadcaster.
I can't believe that he's been around for 27 years broadcasting. That's insane to me. Like, now hold on a second. Was he on? He wasn't on TV during the World Series run, Was he?
No,
No, and he wasn't on the radio because it was Rooney and Farmer. So what are they counting there? Was he like jumping on the mic on the side? Was he like sitting in the pregame? Because 20 years ago, Darrin Jackson was not one of the guys in the booth, was he?
Unless that was Hawk and DJ. Well, he might have been in the TV booth actually in 2005. Now that I'm thinking about it,
That's insane.
Paciorek had been gone for a while at that point.
Wow, that is wild to me. It's probably true. That is wild to me that he's been around that long. Anyway, what did he say?
Well, so Merkin asked him about, obviously, what does he think about the 2025 White Sox? And he was really, he saw some encouraging things. And then Merck asked him, when does he think the White Sox are going to compete? And he said, Darrin Jackson said, 3 years from now, 2028 is when he thinks they will finally be a competitive team.
F*** Darrin Jackson. I mean, seriously, that's the craziest thing I've heard. Are you kidding me? We're not competing for 3 more years? This better not be one of those propaganda things, Ed. This better not be one of those things. Hey, just be patient for another 3 years. The time is now. I've met Darrin Jackson. I hope he understands that when I say that it's just a visceral reaction to, I can't believe that you think we got to wait 3 more years to compete. And I think you're wrong, Darrin. But you know what? I don't have anything against you. You're very kind to me. Met you a few different times. All right. I just say that, and that was just a knee-jerk reaction there, okay? I got nothing against you. But are you out of your mind with Kyle Teal and Edgar Caro and Chase Mydroth and the way that Colson Montgomery is playing and some of these pitchers that are coming up? I could see the argument of next year we want to get better, but you're not really going to start competing until 2027. I could see that argument. But if you're still sitting around telling me keep waiting going into next year, not the season that we're coming up to now, but like 15 months from now, you're still trying to push that just wait 1 more year thing on me. I don't think anybody should buy that. You could do all the goodwill programming that you want to do. You can have as many tailgates out in the parking lots, and you can have John Schriffen running around telling you what it's like to be a real fan. You could push all the better at the ballpark crap out there. But if you're not competing until 2028, we got problems. Me and the White Sox, and hopefully all of you out there in the White Sox, got problems. It's the 20th anniversary of winning the World Series. I want to just put this in perspective, because you saw all weekend, the 26th. I have a cousin who was born on the 26th, right? He was already alive when it happened. But I always joke with him that I remember his birthday because it's also the anniversary of the White Sox winning the World Series. So I always remember his birthday. Like if you look, like our text messages every time on the 26th, I never miss it. Most of the time I'm like, happy anniversary of the White Sox winning, and by the way, happy birthday, because I will never forget that date. But that was 20 years ago this past weekend. And I want everybody to just take a moment and remember that, one, that team was special and incredible and amazing. And Don Cooper talked about it, how incredible and amazing and magical it was. And then I want you to realize that Jerry Reinsdorf has had this team for well over 40 years. And that was the only season in any of those years in which he has owned the team in which the Chicago White Sox won a playoff series. Not just a World Series, won a playoff series.
You're right.
Because you can't count game 163. That's to finish the regular season.
No. And in 83 and in 93, it was just straight to the ALCS. They won the division.
Right. But they got knocked out in the ALCS. They won the division.
Yeah.
But the first time they were in the playoffs, they were knocked out. In fact, that was the thing. That was the thing in 2005. In 2005, they had not won a playoff series since they had won the World Series in 1917. Because you used to go straight to the World Series. In 1959, they went straight to the World Series and they lost. They lost in 83. They lost in 93. These series, 2000, they lost right away. They had never won a playoff series. That's why beating Boston was such a big deal. That's why you celebrated in the streets after you won that series if you're a White Sox fan. That's why it was so amazing just to win the first series, because you had never done it before. That's why when you won the second series against the Angels, you're like, maybe? Like, this is crazy, right? And let me just, though, remind you, that's the only time in the history of a Jerry Reinsdorf-run Chicago White Sox that the White Sox have ever won a playoff series. And in the last 20 years, they've only been to the playoffs 3 times. And that's if you count the weird COVID thing where pretty much half of baseball got into the postseason, where they backed in at the end. And I don't think that they actually make it there if they're playing more than, 60 games that season, because they were falling out of it, remember?
They were sliding hard.
Sliding right out of that thing. They were a third place team if they would have played another 20 games.
That's why Renneria was gone after that season because the team started to arrive in the COVID year and then they disappeared. But that's astonishing. Like you don't really think about it in those terms when you put it that way of Jerry Reinsdorf owning the team since 1980, and here we are 45 years into it, and his teams have won a playoff series one year. Time, and that was in 2005.
1 year they went on a run where they won 3 playoff series all in the same year. One of the greatest teams of the modern era. We're going to talk about AJ's comments. We're going to get into that. Okay. We're going to talk about what he said because he was 100% right when he ranked them as the best team of the last 25 years in the World Series. He was 100% right when he said it. And I will argue with anybody that says otherwise because they went 11-1 through the postseason. They were absolutely incredible. They went wire to wire throughout the entire thing. The rest of the country might want to forget about it, but we remember what they were in 05. Right? I mean,
dominant.
I know we sound like meatballs saying that, like just like how Bears fans, because I'm a Bears fan, would be like 85, greatest defense ever, greatest team ever. Doesn't matter if we never win another one. But really, they were an amazing team in 2005. But you take that year out, he is the worst owner in baseball. You can argue about whether or not you think he's a good basketball owner, and I would argue back, well, anybody that has Michael Jordan should win. But besides that, don't ever come at me with he's a good baseball owner. Don't ever come at me with he's a good baseball man. Don't ever come at me that a guy who told David Sampson reportedly, who came on our show. It's not just we read it in the paper. He came on this show.
He said it. He goes to us.
And I go, are you sure he said it? Remember, that was my question to David Sampson. I know that the quote is that Jerry said something along the lines of, it's better to finish in second place to keep the fans interested, right? I know, but like, he was joking, right? No, he wasn't joking, Chris. That's why
that was his advice to David Sampson.
That's why that's why David Sampson was the number one guest of that guest bounty year. Like the person who brought in David Sampson won the $1,000 over the person that brought in Liam Hendricks and the person that brought in Jake Berger. Because he came on and backed that up. Never forget what Jerry Reinsdorf is. Never, ever, ever forget what Jerry Reinsdorf is. Never forget why you're waiting for a new owner. Never forget why you will feel a little morbid if he dies tomorrow, but you won't feel that bad about it because you'll know your team has more hope when it happens. Never forget it. You're not wrong for feeling that way. Those of you looking to switch to a new age of life, keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living, check out Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. You can help them get around on their own and live independently with stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling. Hyatt will work with your insurance, and they have 0% financing for qualified individuals, and they are the best at the CPAP machines. They're going to mail directly to supplies to you. They're going to get you the latest and greatest. They're going to let you test the whole thing out. They're going to make sure that you're comfortable and it's quiet and you're happy with it and you don't have to worry about it. They also have the latest and greatest in continuous glucose monitors. Check out everything Hyatt Home Medical Equipment can offer to you at hhme.com. Forget the fact that he's a terrible owner. AJ Pierzynski said what he should have said. And if he would have been conciliatory when he was asked that question on the World Series coverage, as to what is the best World Series team of the last 25 years. If he wouldn't have put the White Sox at the top, I would have been aggravated with him because they went 11-1. And right away when that came out, I had a Cubs fan friend say, well, didn't the Astros go 11-1? I was like, nope.
No, they did not.
I wait every year to see if the moment that a team gets their second loss in the postseason, I say good. Because you have the Yankees in the era of which there were 12 or more postseason games. Only I want to say the 99 Yankees and the 05 White Sox had only one loss in the postseason.
Yeah, there's a Yankees team in there. I don't remember which year. And then
might have been
the
97 or 96. It was one of the ones in the 90s.
You're right. AJ was absolutely correct, and he was justified in saying it, not just because he was on that team and lived that team. And of course, if he had done anybody but there at number one, he would have needed to have justified the living heck out of it, because how do you put your own team down? But it is absolutely, from an objective evidentiary standpoint, okay, completely justifiable to sit there and say the 2005 White Sox were the greatest World Series team of the last 25 years.
I mean, there's facts. There's facts.
You can't really argue it, because there was look at the ALCS.
Wire to wire.
Okay?
They went wire to wire and
Wire to
11-1 with 4 complete games in the ALCS in games 2, 3, 4, and 5. They swept the World Series.
Swept the Astros.
They beat
the
defending champions to kick off the playoff run. Oh, they didn't have any competition. They whooped the 04 Red Sox, who were still the same team. Like, you have those things like fantasy thing? Like, would the 85 Bears be able to beat the 2000 Ravens with their 2 defenses? Like, which one would be better, right? Well, would the 04 Red Sox be able to beat the 05 White Sox? No, because I got to see
Apparently
it.
not, because they lost.
It was the same team. It was the same team, and they beat
lost.
them.
They gave up Scott Podsednik's first home run that year. The Red Sox did. Okay, I mean, and if you think about it, it wasn't close. The division series wasn't really all that close between the. I mean, you had El Duque's escape act. And I know there are Red Sox fans to this day who think Johnny Damon checked his swing, but he didn't. And there's all the lamenting over Tony Graffanino letting the ball go through his legs. He did.
Did he get a share? But Tony should have gotten a share. Like under the table.
Tony got a share.
I mean, when Tony let that through, I mean, Tony Graffanino helping out his former team on that one. Brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean,
thank you, Tony.
I mean, there's one angle of Joe Creedy coming around second base where he's just got this look of surprise and then he just smiles. Like, I'm going to have to call Tony later and tell him thanks for booting that ball.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Because I'm sure he's looking back going, he did what? Because Graffanino actually was a pretty good defender.
Yeah, he was a pretty good defensive player. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
but it wasn't even close. And then the Angels took on a Yankees team that year that was actually favored to win the World Series. Right? They were favored over the defending Red Sox.
And the Angels had recently won a World Series as well.
And that was an Angels team that was actually really good.
Yeah.
Like you don't think about it because of how badly the White Sox dominated them, but the Angels that year were a good team.
And Mike Scioscia is a good manager. And that's the thing you always see in the postseason is good managers in the postseason generally push their teams a lot further than they belong. That was a recent champion. The White Sox went through 2 recent World Series champions, largely still the same team in 05. And
how about an Astros team with 3 future Hall of Famers on it, and Bagwell, Biggio, and Roger Clemens?
The only thing I say about that, I will admit this. They were old at that point.
They were old.
Roger Clemens was old. He had a hard time. Andy Pettitte had a hard time out there. I mean, those guys were not in their prime. Bagwell was coming off an injury. That said, you swept the World Series.
I was about to say, you still sweep those guys, and you can't tell me that Clemens and Pettitte in particular. Okay, Bagwell, watching some of the old footage and watching Bobby Jenks blow fastballs by him, he was not the Jeff Bagwell of his youth.
There was no way he was getting around on a guy that was throwing over 100 miles an hour in that era, coming off of the injury that he was coming off of. That's why Guillen went and got him. Guillen was so excited that Bagwell was coming to the plate in game 1 that he couldn't remember which arm to point to for Bobby Jenks, so he just put out the thing.
He didn't want to screw it up again.
Right, so he's like, just give me the big guy because his inning's over. Like that's how excited he was to see him. All right. But again, the fact remains, AJ got trashed in the comments on all social media for giving his top 5 list, which was a really well thought out top 5 list. The 04 Red Sox.
AJ Pierzynski's really smart.
Yeah. The 04 Red Sox one was definitely belonged on that one. They broke the curse. They came back down 0-3 in the ALCS to win 4 in a row and then swept the World Series. Like they won their last 8 games. That was an insane thing that they went and did. Again, that same team came back the next year and got smoked by the White Sox, which is why the Sox are higher on the list. But that was a good pick. His list was really solid. I found it really funny, Cubs fans in the comments. What about the 2016 Cubs? You mentioned the Red Sox, you mentioned the White Sox. You want to know why? Because they weren't that good. You can't tell me the fact that you needed a rainstorm and some luck to pull out the thing at the very end puts you on par with the team that went 11-1 through the postseason against multiple recent World Series championship teams that had come back to go and defend their crowns. That's not the same thing as going up against Cleveland, which hadn't won anything in forever, that was just as shaky and just as nervous and had the same fear that they were going to blow it and be and miss making history. They had the same amount of pressure on them in Cleveland as the Cubs had on them. I mean, it took 7 games to be able to come up with something there right at the end. A ball bounces the wrong way, and you'd have the 2016 championship Cleveland Indians in the comments going, what about Cleveland's 2016 run? And nobody would even be mentioning the Cubs because they would still be cursed. That's how close it was. So you don't get to get in the comments and be like, we're better than the 05 White Sox. No, you're not. You never will be. You never. No. The 2005 White Sox would wipe the floor with the 2016 Cubs. They would destroy them. If the Cubs got one victory in that series, they'd be lucky.
I'm sorry. Do you remember what the 2005 White Sox used to do against left-handers? Do you think John Lester had anything that he could have done?
No.
Against the White Sox that year? No.
This is a team that was so psychologically messed up at the end there that they had to have a meeting during the rain delay to see if they had enough in them. What do you think happens when AJ Pierzynski's behind the plate needling you for 4 games? I'm sorry, they just didn't have it. They were lucky to win when they were able to win. They were a good team. I'm not going to they won a World Series. They're a good team. We're going to sit there and compare the two of them? Give me a break. What a joke. I laugh every time. I laugh every time a Cub fan tries to sit there and tell me the 2016 Cubs were better than or equal to the White Sox of 05. Please. Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money, give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
You swing back around to what we started the show talking about, right? Jerry Reinsdorf, 40 years of ownership with only 1 year where they have any playoff victories is systemic. It's not a curse, okay? There's nothing supernatural about that. That's just a guy that's not willing to do what it takes to win ball games. I mean, you've seen how it can happen, right? We're seeing it right now. I mean, it's not hard to understand how the Dodgers got here. They just spend a lot of money and they're very popular as a result. And so they make a lot of money too. But Jerry's not willing to do that. That's not how he wants to operate. Fine. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to fault him for running a business how he wants to run it. But he also can look at Toronto's got a mix of guys that they've brought up, guys that are cast-offs that are contributing, guys that they have traded for. They've made really, good trades, solid trades. They signed a guy like George Springer to a lot of money. They've got Vladdy, who they've kept their star, right? And they are an example of how to win when you spend a little money as well. You've also seen teams that don't spend a whole lot of money and how they are able to win because they are able to put together the right list of free agents. They are able to build up a team that has good scouting, right? That has a good idea of what these players are. And that's really how the Blue Jays ended up the way they've ended up, because when they looked at Ernie Clement, everybody else saw a guy that was bad enough to be let go by the A's. They saw a guy that had some skill, okay? And he's helped get him here, right? Dalton Varsho was a guy who couldn't hit but could play center field really well for the Diamondbacks. Well, you know what? The Blue Jays looked at him and said, this is a guy that we want on our team. A lot of scouting on Alejandro Kirk was a guy, meh behind the plate, but he can hit. And the Blue Jays went, well, we can work on him being not meh behind the plate. And when we feel like he's not meh, we'll trade Danny Jansen away because that's the guy that we had just in case we needed defense. So the Blue Jays are a study in how you can do this.
You did a hell of a job there going through the Blue Jays. I'm impressed by that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I do pay attention to some things.
I did some solid Blue Jays work right there. I'm sitting here fact checking you. I'm like, you're killing the Blue Jays right here. Good for you, Ed.
I got the Blue Jays down here a little bit. I've got some Toronto envy, I guess. It's and then circling back to what Darrin Jackson said. Okay, you said it at the top. Okay, next year we're pushing for 500, right? That would be a laudable goal, is to get to 500, if not a little bit better. And the question we even have going into this offseason is, can Chris Getz be given enough to be able to pull that off, right? We don't even know if he can pull off a 500 team.
Well, his owner is the whole key to everything, right? I mean, we've talked about that.
That's what I mean.
He's got a little bit. He can make some room, right? Like, first off, he can make some room or he doesn't even need to make some room. He's got some room that's open up in the payroll that he had last year just because of the flexibility and the fact that everybody's basically arbitration, actually really pre-arb. There's only a couple of arb guys. He could open up some salary space. That's why it's important for him to find out what is Jerry going to give him, because it's going to change how he builds his team. If Reinsdorf comes to him and says, I'm not giving you $1 more than what I gave you last year, then he's going to have to break some eggs to make the omelet. He's going to have to get creative to move on from some players. He's going to have to do some things that you might not, that you may look at and say, wow, that was terrible. You dealt Benintendi and you said you'd still pick up $5 million of his $15 million for the next 2 years because you're just trying to get rid of him. Wow, we got beat up on that one. And he's going to look at it like, well, at least I gave myself $10 million more for my payroll. Like his moves, I'm going to tell you right now, his moves will telegraph to you what Reinsdorf gave him. But there are plenty of different ways for him to improve his team. And I think he has every intention of improving his team. He has every intention of fixing the bullpen up a little bit, because a good bullpen is going to help him win games late. And then, like how Don Cooper said, he's going to have to find some innings eaters so that bullpen doesn't become too taxed. And that's probably the main focus. I would love to see like a guy that hits home runs that stands at the corner infield or corner outfield position, and maybe a trade or two that reshapes things, because I don't think Lenin Sosa, because of his defense, really has a place on your team. But maybe you could flip him in a pitcher or something in there to be able to kind of reinvent, reshape the team and keep it going in a more positive direction, getting better and better. But all this is going to come down to, what is the owner going to do, Ed?
Well, and that's where it lies, right? Because, okay, so back to DJ again for a second. Next year, you're pushing for 500. And according to Jackson, after that, you build on that. So he's expecting 26, 500, 27, you're over 500, 28, you're a competitor. And that doesn't have to be the case, all right? That doesn't have to be the case, because you can go into this offseason and you can sit here and say, yeah, we lost 100 games, but we can get above 500 next year if, like you said, the right mix comes along. If we can shore up things that we need. If you can put together a good bullpen plus some guys in the minors that can sit there and be ready to go when inevitably an injury happens or a guy burns out or whatever. If you can have enough of a rotation to keep that bullpen from getting killed, all right? They don't even have to be world beaters. You don't need to go and scour Japan for the next Yamamoto, okay? But if you can find a solid starting rotation, you can compete for a wild card. You can be over 500. You can be Jerry's ultimate dream of being second place. I mean, my gosh, that's not out of the realm of possibility for 2026. I realize it's a little pie in the sky, but 500 could actually get that done in some ways because of the way that the league is. The other part of it is that if you do get it to 500, if you are building on that, this is where I quibble with DJ. What happens in 2027 that you're not building on it to the point where you're contending for the playoffs? If he had said in 2028, I expect them to be a championship caliber team, and 27 a playoff team, and next year a 500 team, I would say, okay, I can get along with you on that one. But if he's saying 27 is going to be a lost year, a year where you're burning another year of pre-arb or arbitration for some of these young players, these guys that you're building around, another year where maybe you're running a pitcher out there, and pitchers have a shelf life, okay?
Guys get hurt.
You can't
guys
do that.
Pull muscles. Guys
cannot do that.
You got all kinds of problems. I mean, Drew Thorpe. I mean, look at him. I was pretty excited about Drew Thorpe, and we're waiting on him to get well enough, and then hope he's going to be good enough that he's going to move himself back into that rotation. Because what you really want is a Drew Thorpe to end up being like a 2 or 3 guy in your staff, and that's what you really want long term. And I think he had the makeup for that before the injury, and you hope he's going to have it. But things happen. Not everybody stays healthy, and the thing is, even 2026 shouldn't be a throwaway year. It shouldn't be.
That's what I mean.
No,
it should not be. There's
none
no
of these
reason.
Should be throwaway. Like you're not going to win the World Series in 2026. You're not even going to win the division in 2026. But you know what? You should be.
A lot of luck would have to happen for that.
You should be competitive enough that it fosters a very good locker room and culture where your young players that are continuing to grow are easily or in an easier way able to take the next step. And you should be in more competitive ball games. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? We can improve by another 10 to 15 games. And if you improve by another 10 to 15 games, you're just a hair under 500. You're a team that during the season, when we're looking at the wild card standings, is sitting there within 5 games of the last spot. You're a team that if all of a sudden you catch fire or you get lightning in a bottle, could be the last team in there in the postseason. But what you are doing, no matter what happens, if you don't get into the playoffs next year, if you just are more competitive next year, that's not a lost year if guys continue to develop and get better. You saw a leap this year. You saw Chase Mydroth work out enough that he's a Major League Baseball player on your team. You saw Colson Montgomery get to the majors, overcome some problems, and turn out to be the highest wins above replacement of anybody on your roster, even though he only played half the year. You want to see him build on that. You saw Kyle Teal and Edgar Caro look like real professional Major League Baseball players and catchers nonetheless. I mean, you have so much happening right now, but you want to see them take the next step. You want to see more things happen with this team. You want to see things gel together. Heck, 26, I want to see the managerial style of Will Venable start to come to the top so I know what he is, right? I mean, 26 should not be a lost year. 27 should be a year where you're expecting to make the postseason. I'm not again, not saying you're going to win anything, but you should be a postseason contender by 2027. That's my problem with Darrin Jackson's comments. Now, I know that if you work for the Chicago White Sox, I know this. Okay, well, I will say I believe this because I don't want somebody saying that I'm making something up here. I believe this. After covering this team long enough, being around people that work with the organization, knowing people that work for the organization, having conversations off to the side, getting a picture of what I think happens inside of there, which many times I've been told it's uncanny how sometimes you really kind of nail it without actually knowing the exact facts of the conversations that are going on back there. Because you can kind of feel after being around this team, being around people that are a part of this team, what actually happens over at 35th and Shields. I believe that there are conversations with the PR department. I believe they sit down, they talk about everything from who should be on the cover of the program to what is our messaging in the off season. I believe those conversations are had after they know what Jerry wants, what Jerry's going to give him, what Jerry's not going to give him, after conversations with the general manager. And then I think it filters out through everybody who is part of the media and the promotions of that team. They all know what the message is. That's why sometimes the message seems so hollow, because you're like, what? What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. They're not any good. Or what are you trying to push on us? That's where it comes from, that united front. So what makes me fearful is that Darrin Jackson's been told, don't get these people's hopes up. That's what bothers me, right? What I hope is Darrin's more like, DJ's kind of more like, well, I mean, I haven't heard anything positive yet, so I'm not putting my neck out there. That's what I hope. I hope that it's still what Merck said a couple weeks ago, like they don't really know what Jerry's giving them. They're still having their meetings. They're not going to know for a couple of weeks. That's what I'm hoping for, Ed. Because, I mean, please don't take hope away from me now. It's only October.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.